All right, welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. Well, we got an entire flashback episode from the Acolyte this week.
16 years prior.
Yes, we talked a lot in the last episode about how the main thing that kind of threw us off was, is it Torben?
Torben.
The
Master
beard.
Torben.
Yeah,
bicycle beard.
The bike tire beard. So...
He did not age well, man.
Tommen Baratheon, first of his name. That's the guy from Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
He played Joffrey's little brother.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I was like, I didn't recognize. That's how jarring the beard was.
I know.
Like it was. Luke had this whole take on the last one. He's like, I don't feel like he's the youngest old guy,
right?
Or oldest young guy I've ever seen. And seeing him without the beard, he looks like a kid.
I know.
Poor Tommen Baratheon.
Yeah, he didn't age well. And I'm not saying I'm aging well at this point. Like I was talking to my buddy Nick yesterday, and he's like, man, I'm aging awfully. And I'm just like, dude, I know what you feel like. You know, I look at myself, I'm just like, man, I've got a lot of new wrinkles over the last 2 years. It's crazy.
Dude, I'm starting to get some grays. Also, I can't play basketball 2 days in a row without feeling like an absolute corpse on the third. Like there's all of this shit that's going on. By the way, Tommen Baratheon died in a very, very cool and interesting way in Game of Thrones. Not that you would know.
Yeah, not
you
that I
haven't
would know.
seen it. Carly and I finished our rewatch of House of the Dragon in preparation for season 2 of House of the Dragon, which we will be
around
covering.
the corner. Yes,
We'll most likely be covering on Monday night this week. And when we finished it, we both immediately got upset again that you guys haven't watched it. Like,
dude, I'm all in on House of the Dragon though.
Yeah, he's all in on House of the Dragon now, which is crazy.
That's the world I know.
I will rope him into a rewatch of Game of Thrones at some point
someday.
in time.
When you and I are less
happen.
busy. We'll do this in 30 years.
Yes,
okay.
exactly. But I found this really fascinating because one of the things that we were keyed in on after the first 2 episodes was, why in the hell would Torben kill himself? Just based on like seeing this girl from his past. And it implies a nasty occurrence of some kind in the past. And I'm not going to lie to you, like there was some sketchy stuff involving separation of families.
Yeah.
And some dogmatic beliefs, which are very Jedi, that's very like kind of typical for the Jedi. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see anything suicide worthy.
I didn't either, man. And that was one of my questions. That was one of my talking points is like, is there still something more there that we just don't know about? And what interested me a lot is all of a sudden all the witches were dead. Like in one fell swoop. Did you notice that?
In the same kind of room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And none of them were really burned. None of them looked damaged.
That room wasn't, they weren't burned. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's just, how they decided to depict that scene or if there was still something else that happened. There very well may be something else that happened there.
I thought the exact same thing. Like separating the family, causing the sister to go crazy and start a fire, which is going to be an interesting thing that we get into. That's one thing. But like, the building's on fire. We have to go rescue the girls and we're going to cut down everything in our way.
Perhaps.
That seems a little bit more in line with something that would be like a deeply traumatic experience and something that maybe Osha would not understand, that Soul would not understand, but maybe the other Jedi, and maybe May would understand. Mm-hmm. And because like that's the thing is like Soul doesn't seem to have any sort of understanding of why May would be as upset as she is.
Right.
So, and I'm with you. Like the bodies were just kind of strewn about, but like there wasn't like they weren't buried in rubble. Rubble was around them.
None
that
of them
room wasn't even on fire. I mean, Soul and Osha literally ran through the room.
Right. Yeah. So that still very much so interests me, and obviously there's still so much to unravel in regards to May and Osha's relationship. The way that overall, I thought that this episode had great storytelling.
I agree.
Like the storytelling behind it was great. Seeing the two sisters grow up together and to see their stark personality differences compared to one another was very insightful and very interesting. Even the way that they were using the Force around the the bantha tree or whatever it was called. I can't remember what
I can't remember what the tree was
it's
called
what
either.
they used for the poison in the previous episode, right? Like Osha was very kind.
Oh, that's the tree that the poison leaves came from? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like Osha was still a little bit forceful with the way that she was manipulating that like flying little bug.
Mm-hmm.
And then May was way more forceful, and Osha's like, dude, you got to chill out.
Yeah.
This is a little bit much.
Me out a little bit, May.
and then from the very beginning too, you could tell that Osha felt like an outcast. Not an outcast really. Like obviously she was loved by the witches, but you could tell that she had this like true desire to do something other than that, and it almost looked like she had a knowledge of the Jedi even before the Jedi were really presenting themselves to her, which I thought was really interesting. She was even drawing like the Jedi symbol.
Yeah,
and I don't even
sure.
know
on her little notebook.
Yeah, and I don't even know if she had seen that symbol yet prior to drawing that. You know,
the witches were aware of the Jedi that were at that outpost, but they also seemed pretty intent on keeping them separated for obvious reasons from the kids. Yeah, so
because the Jedi are predators.
Yeah, when it comes literally, it's
I know.
like, they give us your children.
I know.
Just like it was kind of intense.
Soul's like, we don't take children, and I was like, ooh, do you? I feel like you're taking children now.
Yeah,
and I'm very pro Jedi. Don't get me wrong, but it's.
They're doing it for a reason.
They're doing it for a reason.
The entire Jedi role in this is interesting, and I want to get into that. But I want to start with the twins. Do you know any? Did you grow up with any twins?
Yeah, There's multiple sets of twins in my family. Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? Okay,
both sides.
So you have a good understanding of this.
Yep.
My wife is a twin, a fraternal twin, and then my dad is an identical twin. So like, and I found it really fascinating. Like, Carly talks to me all the time about like the connection that she has with her brother. Yeah. And like how like she even talks about how like it's impossible for her to be unbiased with anything involving her brother just because of the fact that like it's her twin, you know what I mean? And then with my dad, like it's crazy. Like I grew up and my dad would just like go sit out on the patio and sit in his little rocking chair and just talk on the phone with his twin brother for like an hour and a half on random evenings. Wouldn't do that with his other brothers. He'd just do it with his twin. Yeah. And like my dad's twin lives in Texas and we live in Arizona. And so like it just was, there is something to be said about the connection there. And I think they, especially at the beginning of the episode, but extending to when May got so upset that Osha wanted to leave. I think like you and I talked about this when you came over this morning, like, I think this episode serves a very important purpose. And I know there's going to be some criticism surrounding this episode. We talked about that before we recorded. And like this show is off to a slow start in the sense that like they kind of did some quick setting up of the universe, but like now we're slowing down and getting into the weeds a little bit. Yeah. But this is the importance of like setting the stage for why things are the way that they are. It's like the entire season 1 of House of the Dragon. There's all these recastings. You're jumping around a lot. It seems kind of like convoluted. But when you get to the end, the goal is they're trying to get you to understand there is a civil war that is going to burn this country to the ground. You need to understand why these two sides despise each other so much. And like that's the thing. Something's going to happen with these twins. We don't know what it is. But like we saw Osha have an opportunity to stun May at point blank range, and she refused to do so. We don't know what's going to happen from there, but it was important to the story to take the time to explain to us why these two are as connected as they are. And I thought that that's the purpose that it served.
Yeah, and I thought it did a great job too. And even though that there's still so much for us to learn in regards to the plot of the story, primarily who is the Sith? Like I am dying to get a good look at that dude. He looks dope. I cannot wait to meet him.
I want to hear the name too.
I do too.
Darth
and
something.
I want to hear how he talks. You know, we've gotten a little bit of that, but like I really want to understand him and who he is, right? Like he's going to be a dope character.
I hope we get a whole episode that focuses in on the Sith. It would be gold. It would be gold. I doubt we'll get it, but it would be gold.
It would be gold. But one of the reasons why I feel like there's good storytelling here is because we have still so much to learn, but yet we've learned so much, like right off the bat. Like we did not have to wait for some big reveal. Oh, May and Osha are not the same person. We got to learn that like right up front. We got to learn a lot about May and Osha's upbringing, and we didn't have to wait too long surrounding like the major plot of what was the Brundok fire, right? Like I thought we were going to get that at the very, very end, and all of a sudden we're seeing it in the third episode.
Although there might be some piece that we're missing.
There might be, whatever happened to the room where all the witches die, you know, like there's still a question mark there. And it could not be that bad. Like literally, Torben could just feel guilty about them going and splitting up a family. Like there's some, you know, trauma to that I could understand, but there very well could be more to that. But my point being is this is so interesting because we've learned so much, but then there's still so much to still learn. And this storytelling I've enjoyed greatly.
Well, one of the other big holes that it opened up in the story is we understand from conversations between. So first of all, and I should have pulled up the actress's name, and I'm actually going to do that right now because I want to make sure that I give her the appropriate credit. But we have these two characters that are the kind of the leaders of this coven, right?
Oh, Mother Coral
so
and Mother
Jodie Turner-Smith, who plays Mother Anastasia.
Dude.
First of all, incredibly
acting.
difficult role. Okay, like incredibly difficult role. Because I was literally thinking about this. All of the other witches were corny as hell. Like, and it was one of the, and we haven't talked about this, and we're gonna get to it at the end. And like that was a major thing that like pulled me out last night. I'm like, as they're doing the chant, I'm like, oh my god,
it was, and they start to like sing mid chant.
Yeah,
like together as one.
Yeah, I was waiting for somebody in the background to be like, oh.
I know,
like it just
throw out
like one of those
chirping
epic chants.
I know, there's like a bird. Yeah,
I'm like, this is getting. I'm like, what is going on? This is getting weird. But Jodie Turner-Smith, the lady who played Mother Anastasia.
Yeah.
One of the things I told Carly, we were watching it last night. Carly was kind of falling asleep, but it was late. Literally, I was like, you have to have such a vibe and energy to successfully pull off this role that she's pulling off. And she just absolutely nailed it. From the beginning, there was, when she gave her little breakdown of the thread, and she kind of like demonstrates the force by like, you know, you get a little visual representation. She gives this really interesting speech, and she talks about how like the Jedi do not allow them to exist because they perceive their power as dark, which I thought was super fascinating.
Right.
Because like we've seen this a lot throughout Star Wars, but like there's all of these different factions that use the Force in different ways. Like there are healers that are not necessarily Jedi, but that tap into the light side of the Force. There are the Dathomirian Night Sisters, which appear to be a completely different coven than this particular coven.
Right.
There's
even the mountain sect that's on Dathomir that we didn't know about, that we learned
Tales
in
of the Jedi.
Yeah, or Tales of the Empire.
Tales of the Empire, yes.
Yeah.
And then there's like the shadow assassins from Umbara that use the Force to conceal their presence when they walk into, like, there's all these different like users of the Force, right? And in the distant past, they all kind of like existed together in the galaxy. But as the Jedi as their influence grew, they basically tried to wipe their existence from the galaxy. But in some way, shape, or form, we know that the Dathomirian Night Sisters were at least left alone by the Jedi.
Right.
Because it wasn't until Dooku and the Separatists went in and killed them that became an issue. But I did find that fascinating. And I wonder if the loophole is the training of children piece, but then the Night Sisters were probably training their children too.
So I think, and there, I could see how people would be hating on the Jedi for this, but like, really, like, can you blame the Jedi for what they're doing, right? Like, we know what can fester if a Force user isn't guided towards the light in some way. Like, you could have a really bad, powerful Force user, and you can't really blame the Jedi for like identifying two obviously potentially very potent Force users in Osha and May and wanting to at least kind of like open the door for them to come into their order, right? And a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, I don't think they were ever just going to steal May if she didn't want to go. Like, I think they were truly going to just let that be and just, you know, take one on the chin there. But Osha really wanted it. Like, her heart wanted it, it seemed like. So much so that
it was obvious.
It was so obvious. Like, she was drawing pictures of it. Like, even before she had come in contact with Soul, the conversation surrounding like them around that tree in the beginning, it was so obvious that like Osha didn't want to go through that like ascension ritual or whatever it was.
It even got darker. She was like, I don't want to live the same life as May. Like she wanted a separate life. Like she was like a twin that didn't want to be a twin.
Right. So like I can't really blame the Jedi all that much. Like I can see why it looks very predatory, but like really the Jedi are coming from a good spot too. But then Mother Anastasia, or how do you say her name?
Mother Anastasia.
Anastasia. Her conversation on the Jedi and whether they're good or bad, how it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. They're literally just trying to broker who uses the Force, which was a really interesting take on the Jedi, I thought.
Well, so this is something I found really fascinating in my re-listen to Darth Bane, which I've been going through because I wanted to go through the Sith books again just before we go through the show. And so I'm in the third Bane book right now. And, you know, in the second Bane book, they actually go over it so when Sarah goes to visit Coruscant to discuss the assassination of Med Tandar, the Jedi that went to go look for those talismans on Done or whatever. When they're there, she's talking to that Master Oba, and they end up in this like philosophical conversation about the Jedi and the Sith. And one of the things, like Sarah ends up recalling back to a conversation that Khalib had with her. And Khalib's her father, remember? And if you remember, Khalib during the New Sith Wars would only heal non-Jedi and non-Sith because he wanted nothing to do with it. And so they kind of teleport back, and it's like this conversation that Sarah and Khalib are having. And Khalib basically goes like, the Jedi and the Sith are both wholly uncompromising. Mm-hmm. Their ideologies do not allow for the existence of each other. And like that's really the fundamental piece of it that makes this complicated. Like you had mentioned, like the Jedi are constantly like, oh, this is a Force talented individual. We need to grab them and siphon them into our system. Or like, oh, here's a coven of witches. Here's this dark Jedi that got loose. Here's this, alleged Sith rumor, whatever it is. And they were just constantly like playing whack-a-mole with everybody else who used the damn Force.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so like if there's something to be said about the fact that like the Jedi have this like kind of perception of being these like peacekeepers but what they really are is they would be like if there was a church, like imagine if there was like a specific organized church that just went systematically around and snuffed out and stopped any other church from existing. Yeah. Like that's but then also puts out this image that they are the moral high ground. You know what I mean?
No, and the Jedi do take it like that extra step, right?
Yeah,
where
exactly.
They're like, hey, if you're a Force user, we essentially want you.
Mm-hmm. But then again, like you sympathize with the Jedi in the sense that like the Jedi just like if you were to like sit down and ask Yoda about it, he would be like, well, if we allow a cult of dark side users,
what does that look like?
Like what happens in 50 years when all of a sudden they're like mobilizing and they want to go to war? But that's kind of the point is like, and like,
truly
Khalib
the Jedi we know are
blame
good.
The Jedi. Khalib doesn't just blame the Jedi. He blames the Sith too, because inevitably the Sith want conquest because that's kind of like baked into who they are. It's like the ultimate selfish like pursuit of power and influence. And so it's convoluted and complicated, but I did find that really fascinating. And again, like Mother Anastasia, she just that Jodie Turner-Smith, she just nailed it, and she kind of saved that whole episode for me. Her acting ability kept me engaged when the others were struggling. And you know what I really appreciated about her too, as a juxtaposition, she didn't want Osha to go become a Jedi.
I'm glad you brought that up.
She was going to let her.
Yep.
You know?
I think that's a power move.
And she was the one that preached calm and like, hey, let's negotiate with the Jedi. Let's not just go to war. Remember, all those girls had their bows out there ready to throw
witches
down.
And bows, man.
Dude,
they love that. They love that shit. No, I agree. You're bringing up points that I wanted to talk about, and you're talking about them, beautifully. Like, I thought her parenting skills were really good, and those are the conversations that parents hate to have with their kids, and I was even thinking about Graham growing up. Like, there's going to be a time when Graham wants to do something where I'm just going to be like, oh, like, I don't know if I want you to do that. Whether it be him being a go-kart driver or
what if
like
he's
a
like, Dad, I really
player.
want a dirt bike, and he beats you up for 18 months, and you're like,
I'm just
no,
brother, dirt bikes are pretty dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, So I like sympathize with her, and at the end of the day, though, like let's say she didn't let Osha go, like that would have just created just as big of a rift with her and Osha, and at the end of the day, than it wouldn't have if she just allowed it.
Well,
So,
a real basic example of it is I think about this with my parents all the time, because most of us kind of stay close to home. Like I went to college I went out of town for a couple of years, but I came back. My sister moved to Phoenix briefly, but she came back. My brother stayed in Tucson the whole time. My little brother went to go play football at West Point and basically disappeared to the West Coast or to the East Coast, and like we barely saw him over and now he lives in Houston, and like we just don't see much of him. And like imagine if Graham had like literally a full ride scholarship to the University of Arizona. You and Elena owned a rental property down there that was like a perfect place for him to live.
Right.
His friends were there. He had a girlfriend and everything. Everything was like set up. And then he was like, no, I want to go I'm going to get a loan, and I'm going to go to this school in, Florida or something like that. And you were just like at a certain point, you'd have to be like, okay, if that's what you want to do,
Dude, I know.
And that happens to families all around all the time. You know what I mean?
All the time.
And you, being a father, can relate to what that would probably feel like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, too, like to a smaller level, I even experienced that. Like growing up in Prescott, I actually was slotted to go to Yavapai College and go through their nursing program there. And then kind of last minute, I was like, I'm going to go to Tucson. And that's not super far away. It's a 4-hour drive, 4.5-hour drive.
And you're really close with your parents.
Very close to my parents. Super, super close. But then, like the world has a way of working itself out, right? So like now my parents are here in Tucson, and they're loving it, and they're like dream house, and they're I brought them to the dark side by bringing them to Tucson, Arizona, and like it does work out. It really does work out. So when I was watching this, I was going to ask myself, like, does this feel like Star Wars? I always ask myself leading into any watch of a show or a movie related to Star Wars, and I think some people are going to say, no, it doesn't feel like Star Wars. To me, this show totally felt like Star Wars. It talked about good versus evil. It talked about the history of the Jedi Order, and we got to learn about that. Some people would argue, hey, having witches being a part of Star Wars isn't very Star Wars-like, but obviously you and I, that it's super, super Star Wars-like. The use of magic,
hiding from the Jedi makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. The way that it looked felt like Star Wars too. It really did. And then I was complaining about the music last week, but the music was spot on, dude. It was really, really good. There was like this use of like a beautiful like French horn in the beginning of the episode this week, and overall, like it just truly felt like Star Wars.
The one music piece that pulled me out of it was during the chant.
When
the chant was baked into the song. That one scene was like
Was there a bird there? Was there a bird? It was like caw.
Dude, it was so weird. And like there's this episode of I was literally thinking about this. Actually, watched this episode last night. I was putting on South Park just to help me go to sleep. And
you sleep to South Park? Jason, there's one of your problems right there, bro. Jason complains about not being able to sleep. Are you serious? Watching South Park?
Every once in a while. So there's this episode where like it kind of focuses it focuses in on like the media and their obsession with like watching people fail. And like it focuses on like Britney Spears and just how much of a slob she is, and then eventually she like shoots herself in the head.
Oh gosh!
So then instead of being dead, like her head's blown off, right? So like there's just no head there. It's like just her lower jaw.
How are you gonna sleep to this, bro?
And then like the country still keeps like funneling her to concerts and stuff, and like putting her on stage with her headphones. And then like when she's so messed up. When the concert's over, it like goes to TMZ, and it's like, oh my gosh, Britney was such a mess. You should have seen her. She didn't even have her head.
Oh my god!
And then it shows a picture of it. It's like, she's put on a few pounds.
Oh my gosh!
Dude, it's so absurd. It's completely absurd. Yeah. It's kind of like it's talking about the media, and which is like legitimate, because I see this even in sports media where it's like anytime they have an opportunity to jump on a player in a negative way, that they will, and especially with like the debate shows, like they'll get on. There was a whole segment on First Take the other day because LeBron unfollowed Kendrick Perkins on Twitter.
Oh my gosh!
And it was like a 10-minute segment, and like Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins are calling LeBron soft and emotional, and like all this. It's like literally it's so damn stupid. But in it, everyone at the end of the episode, everyone in the village when they're getting ready to sacrifice Brittany to this weird deity of some kind of bizarre, but they start throwing in random chants and they're just like, oh no, they'll just
that would have made you feel
I
like.
literally was just imagining watching that scene. I'm just I'm waiting for someone just to lift their hands up and just start chanting and doing weird stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude, that definitely
was the
pulled me
one.
out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's the one time I felt really pulled out in that. Yeah, the type of the way that ritual went just it kind of felt clumsy more than anything else, and a little bit corny.
Do you think that I think the director deliberately tried to make the Coven of Witches not look dark? Did you notice that?
Yeah, no, I don't.
They almost were. It almost looked like they tried to make them look like monks. Female monks.
I mean, yeah, I think they were trying to toe the line of not being evil, but then also being weird.
Yeah. Well, and then they straight up possessed one of the Jedi Padawans like that. You know?
Torben, my guy.
Torben was easy.
You got to work on your defenses, my guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we making of this conception theme?
Yeah.
So this to me was the one of the more kind of complex plot developments that took place in this episode. So there's this female, I'm assuming a Zabrak is what she looked like.
She looks like it.
And the Zabraks are, they're the ones with the horns on their head. She's basically the female version of Darth Maul. But then again, I thought the female Zabraks didn't have horns on their heads either, so she might just be an entirely different species. I'm honestly not sure.
Because Asajj doesn't have.
Yeah, but horns. I'm not sure what that dynamic is. But there's
someone will know.
She carried the children, right?
Yes,
but she's clearly not the mother because Anastasia is the mother, and because they freely talk about that. So
right.
But there's a specific mention from Anastasia where she says the Jedi would certainly not be okay with our existence if they found out how we conceived these children. What I find fascinating about that is there is no male in the picture. So what makes you
there's some sorcery.
There's some sorcery going on. And one of the specific things I thought about with that was we only know of one other time in Star Wars history where there was an infant conceived through the power of the Force.
I know.
It was Anakin Skywalker. So I'm really curious to see where they're going with that.
I agree. That kind of did annoy me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, just because it's such a big deal for Anakin to be conceived by the Force, but then yet it happened with a couple twins on Brendok.
Oh, for sure.
And I was just that kind of
explain how Anakin was conceived too. It was on accident.
What do you mean?
Darth Plagueis and Palpatine.
Yes. Yeah. Break it down.
So if you read the Darth Plagueis book, there's a phase after Plagueis gets attacked at the Order or the Canted Circle where Plagueis dips deeply into the Force and Palpatine dips deeply into the politics realm, and they kind of separate and they do their thing. But whenever they come together, they Palpatine will join Plagueis and they'll basically do experiments with the Force, because Plagueis' whole game plan was, we are the end of the rule of two. You are going to become the chancellor. When you become elected, you're going to name me co-chancellor.
Yeah.
We're going to do this together, and I'm going to figure out how to make us immortal. And we're going to be two immortal Sith Lords that rule the galaxy for all eternity. That was Plagueis' plan. Now, Palpatine the whole time.
Palpatine's okay, you can do that, sure.
The fuck you are going to live on. I'm going to be your apprentice for all time.
You realize we're Sith, right? I need to kill you at some point.
That's one of my favorite parts of the book, too. During Palpatine just eviscerates Plagueis when he's killing him with this epic speech, and part of it's you really thought Darth Bane's plan didn't. You were the one guy. Every Sith Lord after Darth Bane got overthrown by his apprentice, but you were going to be the guy. It's so funny. But anyway, basically what happens is Palpatine and Plagueis are conducting these Force experiments to try to extend their life. And in the process, there's this idea that the Force automatically balances itself. And basically, I think Anakin's 10 in The Phantom Menace, something like that. He's about 10 years old.
Pretty young.
So basically, 10 years before The Phantom Menace, they're doing this experiment, and they accomplish something. I can't remember the specifics, but they accomplish something where they actually tilt the Force, the balance of the Force in some way, shape, or form. And Palpatine and Plagueis are all stoked. They're holy shit, we're doing crazy stuff with the dark side here. Well, 10 years later, in the end of the Plagueis book, the Anakin kind of comes to the surface, and Plagueis has like a freak out.
Yeah.
And like Plagueis is like, wait, what? You like he was conceived by the Force?
I know.
And then
the Force was like, all right, you guys are getting out of hand. Like, we're gonna make an Anakin because of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So literally Plagueis like starts running around, like he goes to the Naboo like hotel room where quarters where they're staying there, and he's like, I want to talk to Anakin. Is he here? And Anakin wasn't there. He was off at the Jedi Temple. And then like he sprints to the ship landing platform, and he actually looks as Anakin's like boarding the ship to go back to Naboo, and he's like, shit, I didn't get a chance to catch him, but like Plagueis wanted to catch him because he saw him. He saw Anakin as the Force like reacting to what they had done.
Which it did.
So he perceived him as like a massive threat.
Right.
And he literally says in the book, he goes, "Are we undone?" Like he literally was like freaked out about Anakin, right? And and that's kind of the genius in Palpatine's plan, where it's like all I have to do is convert him to the dark side, and then we're good.
Hey, he did mostly for a long time.
For a long time. But anyway, like that concept, like Anakin was conceived by the Force as a counter to the growing power of the dark side. This feels very intentional.
This feels super intentional.
And so I am curious where they're going to take that.
I'm curious to see if we get to learn about what actually happened, or if that just stays, in the shadows for eternity. It'd be funny because, like, Mother Coral, what if she just hooked up with some dude too? And she's like, oh yeah, like Mother Anastasia, like she goes your thing totally worked. I'm totally pregnant now. And that's like all it is, and everyone's like making a huge deal about it, but really she just got knocked up.
She comes back. Yeah, she's like, I swear I just got my ship and orbited the planet a few times. Yeah. Where were you the last few days?
Yeah, but I'm totally pregnant.
Not having sex.
We'll see. I mean, who knows? We could find that out later.
Yeah. But yeah, so like in terms of the but that was kind of like the pathway of the episode, right? Like we kind of get to learn a little bit more about why the twins are as close as they are, some of the rift that exists between them, this coven, and them being kind of like a unique Force user group that exists. That we don't know what happened when the fire happened, if the Jedi did something to kill the witches, but something along those lines may or may not have taken place. And then obviously we get Osha leaving with the Jedi and headed to Coruscant.
Right. One last thing. Soul. Dude, an immensely likable character.
Oh yeah.
When Osha was kind of losing it when she came out of her like little coma that she was in, you could see a tear go down Soul's face, and I thought that was super powerful because like at that second you could tell that Soul like almost felt fatherly in regards to Osha, which obviously is like a big no-no for the Jedi. And again, as far as storytelling, that just shows the importance of Soul seeing Osha again for the first time when he got so excited to see her. Like he like literally got so happy. It reminded me almost of like the prodigal son, like which is like a one of my favorite biblical stories. Like when the dad sees the son who has been off, like
he just doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
He
just like
stuff.
He's just happy to see him, and I thought that was really cool. Like I thought that was dope.
I totally agree. It like. There's no doubt that Soul is like the most fascinating of the Jedi characters to this point.
Absolutely.
Although I'm not gonna lie, Kel Naka has a vibe too.
Yeah.
Like, and I love that they're not interpreting what he's saying.
I know.
I like,
dude, he's got like a buzz cut on the side too. Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah, but like
he's cool.
The Kel Naka thing where it's just like he's clearly like communicating with Osha at one point, and like but we don't know what he's saying. Like that to me is such a subtle little Star Wars thing because they never actually tell you what Chewie's saying either. You have to like interpret it. You have to like kind of imply it's implied into what he's saying. But in terms of the episode itself, like because we talked about this before we got on the air, but like there's going to be a lot of backlash over just like how weird it was. And my response to that is pretty simple. And I was literally thinking this last night as I was watching it. Like I'm easy to please in this department. So like I'm probably the last person to ask. I know that when I talk to the more casual Star Wars fans that like some of my producers and like some of my other friends, like it's a different type of conversation. But for me, I have a massive amount of leeway as it pertains to some of like the corniness and cheesiness as long as I'm invested in the story. And like that to me is what ruined the sequel trilogy. Was there was a deeply messy story,
right?
In addition to the corniness. And
there's so many negatives.
Can you imagine how much we would have, like, the lobbing laser fire would have been a tough one for me to get over no matter what, but it would have been easier to get over if the story was coherent for those 3 movies. And so for me, like, I was like, okay, weird story or weird episode, but like this episode was vitally important to progressing the storyline. Yeah. And like, so for me, I was like, it just didn't bother me. I enjoyed it.
Well, and then you and I are a little bit of like Star Wars purists, if you will. And at the end of the day, you know, for us to be happy, not that like we need to be happy. I'm not asking for a show to be made for Jason and I, but things just have to make sense in the Star Wars universe, and everything that's happened so far, in my opinion, has made complete sense for the Star Wars universe, and that makes it gain a huge plus in my book.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. I was when May was alive at the end, I was half expecting her to run into a Sith.
Oh, that would have been
like,
sick.
But it would have been too fast, and I'm glad they didn't do it. But like in the moment, I was like, I hope that they dive
that would
more
have been
into
so
that, because
cool.
like,
dude, well,
if the Sith don't have any camera time aside from when they're fighting the Jedi, I feel like that'd be such a wasted opportunity.
Agreed. There needs to be some development of that.
There has been very little live action character development of the Sith. Mm-hmm. We only see Palpatine when he's interacting with. You get a little bit in Revenge of the Sith where you see some of the subtle manipulative conversations
between
that Palpatine's having Anakin, which by the way George Lucas did an amazing job with that whole setup. You see a little bit of like in Rise of Skywalker, an epic version of Kylo Ren tracking down a holocron on a planet, cutting down a bunch of locals, which to me is very Darth Bane. Although that always bothers me because it's like this 25-year-old artifact is what we're...
like a map.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't even get us started. Jay, we do not.
Yeah, we don't need to get into it. But like there's a little bit of that with like the conversations between Kylo Ren and Palpatine on that planet, stuff like that. But there is not a whole lot of that like deep character development of the Sith, and like the problem with it is like there's been so much character development with the Jedi, and so like I really hope that they take the time in this series. Like I'd love to have a full episode where it's just like, here's how May met the Sith apprentice.
Right.
Here are the conversations they've had. Here is where she learned about the Sith code. Here is where all of these specific details were worked out. By the way, random thing did you see the reel I sent you this morning with the guy who played the Force Unleashed character?
No.
And he also was the voice of Darth Maul in Rebels. So I sent it to you. When in the episode where Darth Maul is like has his robot legs and he's in his spider form and he's like down in the thing.
That was a rough time for Darth Maul. He was going through.
He was going through it. Well, his like psychobabble when he's like in that state, he's reciting the Sith code. And what's cool is once again I'm blanking the Darth Maul voice actor.
He's cool.
His name is Ray Park. No, Sam Witwer. Sam Witwer. By the way, I've seen enough clips on Instagram of Sam Witwer to the point where like he's an actor who like is a diehard Star Wars fan, which I like absolutely love.
100% know the vibe you're putting
secondly,
down.
like he straight up said he's like I snuck that in. He's like no, he's like that was not in the script. He's like I just. When I was in front of the microphone, I just started mumbling the Sith code.
So cool.
And then it made its way into the episode.
Dave's like, hey, good
really
work.
Cool.
Good work.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, that just shows the importance of having people around Star Wars who know Star Wars.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, for sure. It's
always been our issues with 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, oh, for sure. But like
Kathleen just not knowing.
But if we got an episode where they kind of focused in on some of that type of development, like if you had a scene where May at 12 years old is sitting down at some sort of campfire on some remote planet with the apprentice of the Sith, and he's telling her about the Sith, like something like that would be something I'd be so into, and I hope we get something like
that.
Dude,
and that could be next episode with the way that they've been, shooting through these fixtures of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows, man? Because I agree. Like, obviously, Leslie has. We think that she's probably read the Bane books, because we see a lot
I think she's a true Star Wars fan.
We see a lot of comparisons with the Bane books in this.
Oh, for sure.
And actually, Xana gets met by Bane by chance after a huge event occurs
At around the same age.
Like,
where Xana loses her family.
Yeah. Who's to say that we don't see that? Like, we're seeing all these unique pieces that are very Bane book-esque. Like, who knows? Like, maybe we do start the next episode and maybe we do get to meet the Sith, or the Sith apprentice, whoever. Like, that would be a really dope start to an episode where she's like mourning the loss of her family. Right, she's next to that tree. That means so much to her. Like, she went back to the tree in hopes that she'd, by chance, meet up with her sister, who always went to the tree. Well, sister's not there for once. The first time she's not there. Like, can you imagine how powerful it would be if the Sith Lord was standing there with the saber?
Oh my gosh, dude!
It'd be incredible.
I was thinking this last night as I was like turning it on, because we were just getting ready to go to bed, and I wanted to watch something, and I was like, oh shit, dude! Like, I was like, the Acolyte episode, and I was like, might as well watch it now. I'm not gonna watch, like, that way I don't have to watch it in the morning.
Right.
And I just feel so lucky to be having, like, not just new Star Wars content, but new Star Wars content that exists outside of the Skywalker storyline. Like, even the excitement that I feel for these episodes is different. The only other show that kind of gave me this vibe in terms of, like, kind of the newness of the story was Ahsoka, because it kind of fits into that gap between 6 and 7 where there's like 30 years where you can tell a whole new story.
Right.
But like there's no doubt that this whole this kind of High Republic world building it's like a prequel to the prequel in a lot of ways too. Like, I've enjoyed getting that new Star Wars content, and like, again, I'm easy to please. Luke and I talked. We know there's going to be a lot of people bitching and moaning about this episode and about just like Disney and all that shit, and like, I just don't care that much. Like, I'm enjoying it too much to get invested in the negativity.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it too, big time.
Any other thoughts you have on the episode?
No, man, that's it.
All right, guys, that's all we have for today. We will be back on probably Monday night. We'll see. It depends on how some stuff goes with the schedule, but we're gonna do House of the Dragon episode. We might even just knock them out back to back, maybe in like one sitting. But we got House of the Dragon episode 1 coming out this weekend, and then we also have Acolyte episode 4 coming out. We need to track down like a YouTube video for you to watch that's like a little bit of a recap on season 1 of House of the Dragon, just so you can get back up to speed.
That'd be nice.
I enjoyed it.
There's
way
a chance
more
that they might have that leading into the show, but I still think it would be a good idea for us to do that.
For sure, yeah. Like, I think it'd be worth watching like a 10-minute video on it, because like Game of Thrones is just so big on like some of the deeper like relationship building stuff. So like, I think it'd be worthwhile. But,
and just getting reacquainted with all the names, because they're kind of weird names.
Oh, they're
like hard for me to say.
Yeah, for sure. It takes some getting.
Yeah.
Once you kind of like, there's like a political world building element to Game of Thrones that like, once you understand, makes sense. Like, there's like these regions of the map, and there are these specific families that are like leaders of those regions.
Yeah.
And then there's like these smaller families that are beneath. To me, I actually appreciate that. It's no different than like us looking at like, oh, the Sereno has all these rich guys that are the counts, and like historically the Serenian counts like were anti-republic and were constantly like fostering rebellion and things along those lines. They eventually launched the separatist movement. Like that's just like a little tiny piece of the Star Wars story that like fits into all of these other little parts. Like, I've always appreciated that.
Oh yeah, for sure. What's kind of nice too about me not knowing anything about Game of Thrones is like, there's probably a lot of viewers that are just checking into House of the Dragon too. So like, you explaining stuff to me is probably somewhat beneficial. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a good watch if you're not super familiar with Game of Thrones, and if you just want to watch, a part of that world, check it out, because that's exactly where I'm at.
Luke is under the impression that many of you haven't watched it, but he just doesn't know any better. All right, guys, that is all we have for today. We will see you later this weekend.
Thanks a lot.